Spy Cops Info Podcast, a series on the secret undercover political police who infiltrated over 1,000 campaign groups since 1968. Episode 40, Mitting retires, and Tranche 3 Phase 1 preview. Welcome to the Spy Cops Info Podcast. My name's Tom Fowler and I'm joined with
Chris Bryan from the Undercover Research Group.
Good to have you back, Chris. We haven't done one of these for a while, but about to go live again. We'll be back at the inquiry in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was the first since we've done one in, was it March and April for that weird procedural hearing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I intended when we had this big gap in between the hearings, I was like, oh, we should do a load of podcast episodes. But then the last thing personally I wanted to do was talk about undercover police.
Well, I mean, lots of things got in the way, didn't they? Yeah. To be fair, you have been talking about Spy Cops since then a lot. Doing various events, festivals and stuff. You even got to do one with me.
Lucky me. We've done a few. Got a few more coming up. I'm doing something in Bristol, which will have already happened by the time this comes out. There's a whole bunch of stuff actually with the next set of hearings happening.
Yeah, there's a whole load. All three of us from the Undercover Research Group are doing all dates to be confirmed. Also, Kate Wilson's going to be over in the autumn as well, November, December actually. Going to be talking more about her book, Disclosure, which is excellent. Highly recommend that if I haven't already. Yeah.
Keep an eye out for that. Just keep an eye on the Spy Cops hashtag on whatever for social media, and we'll all be sharing the details as they come out. As Chris said, to be confirmed, but hopefully should get those firmed up in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, so the reason we're doing this podcast episode is about Tranche 3 Phase 1, which is the next stage of the inquiry hearings, looking at deployments of undercover officers starting after 1993. It'll be the last of the tranches on the SDS, the Special Demonstration Squad. But there's been a few bits of news that has happened since we last covered the inquiry, not least the fact that the chair is announced his retirement.
I guess that's always possible given, what is he, in his late 70s, mid 70s now, so there's always a possibility. What he said in the statement, he wanted to retire by the time he was 80. It's not an immediate retirement though, is it? He's
no.
Going to write a second interim report which actually will cover the entire the period of the SDS's operations, leaving the next chair, whoever that may be, to deal with Tranche 4, which is the National Public Order Intelligence Unit, and plus Tranche 5 as well. Presumably that chair will also be writing the final report as well. It's a bit confusing. How are they going to do that? Are they just going to reiterate what's said in Mitting's second interim report and then add some? Or are they going to be just two separate reports, and the actual final report in reality you actually only talk about Tranche 4 and 5?
There are those of us who are quite concerned of how long it'll take to appoint a new chair, whether a new chair ever will be appointed. There's plenty of public inquiries that have happened in the past that meant to have a second part that never got that second part. I'm thinking of Leveson. Obviously slightly different. Let's not forget that Mitting wasn't the original chair. We had Lord Justice Christopher Pitchford originally, who sadly succumbed to motor neuron disease and died and had to be replaced. So yeah, like you say, the third chair will theoretically have oversight over the whole of the inquiry and make a report over all of that. It feels kind of to me that it's going to work like that because, as you say, he's only looking at the MPORU and then the regional police forces undercover operations. I don't think it's going to work properly. I mean, has anything in the undercover policing inquiry worked properly? Probably not.
It does seem a bit piecemeal, doesn't it? We don't have such a great deal of anonymity granted both the undercovers and also the back office staff for that tranche.
Mitting claims that his interim report will be published towards the end of 2027.
Yeah, I mean, after the end of Tranche 3, because of the second part of Tranche 3, early next year, well, actually early to mid next year now, because it doesn't finish to July. But beyond that, I think the schedule has got massive question marks after it. So we're sort of creeping into the announced decision about what's going to happen with the schedule. It's a proposed schedule that the inquiry released earlier this summer, which means that Tranche 4 the hearings there will not actually happen until 2028. Just a reminder, it's 2025 right now. I actually get confused with what year we're in now, because I still can't quite get over the facts that Tranche 4 is not going to be for another 3 years. Just
also a reminder that the inquiry was called in March 2014, just to give you an idea of how long this process has been going on, for those who needed reminding.
And also 2028 means that it will become the longest public inquiry ever. So
Hooray!
so
Woo!
so previously it was the Bloody Sunday one, but that was actually, it only lasted that long because the actual publication of the report was delayed for several years. The actual hearings, though, I believe, only lasted 7 or 8 years. Obviously, it was the second inquiry into the Bloody Sunday massacre. But yeah, so it will become the longest ever judicial inquiry, at least.
I mean, that felt inevitable quite a few years ago. But yeah, 2028 as well. I mean, that's just the earliest possible opportunity for it to happen. It wouldn't surprise me if it was later than that. The Home Secretary has to appoint a new chair. I can't imagine that a new chair is going to be appointed before the current one retires. It would seem bad form to do that sort of thing within the judiciary, kind of in the world in which they live. I just can't see things happening in a particularly timely manner. And nothing has happened in a timely manner so far in proceedings.
I was thinking, obviously, we've had many, many delays before. Probably like twice a year, there's an announcement
Mm,
about a further delay, isn't there?
mm. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess to some extent, all those other delays, for some reason, I kind of took on the chin. But this final one, partially because we're within touching distance of getting to Tranche 4, which includes the undercovers that both of us knew
Mm,
the best, I think, and impacted us the most. I
mm,
think that it was just like that being snatched away because
mm,
up to about like 4 weeks, 6 weeks ago, we were probably a bit skeptical about it, but we were
mm,
thinking, or at least we were being told that it would have been
mm.
2026 when we would have heard that evidence.
The NPOIU officers are not just the ones who we were both like affected by the most. They were the officers who were still deployed when the units were exposed. Obviously, many of the spy cops watchers have been affected by deployments going right back to the beginning of the unit. But certainly, there was quite a large cohort of us who were affected by the NPOIU officers, particularly. I think there's been a lot of people who've been anxiously anticipating this fourth tranche a great deal. So there's a lot of anticipation about the tranche 4 hearings. And there's a realistic fear that they may not happen, or if they do happen, it's going to be so late on from when these events took place. It's going to be 20 years later. That's just insane, really, isn't it?
When Missing did announce his retirement, I did have an optimistic take on it. Most of the MPIOU officers, the majority of them, 2/3 at least,
Mm,
have full anonymity, i.e., so we'll never even know their cover names, let alone their real names. Okay. So Missing granted all those anonymity orders.
mm,
So I was hoping that the new chair will review those orders because partially maybe they don't want to be presiding over part of the inquiry which won't actually be public in the main. And secondly, those orders were granted often on the basis that the officers were serving police officers. It's not a good enough reason as far as I'm concerned, but was for missing. But obviously, most of those officers will be retired now. By
mm.
now, if that was the reason, then those reasons are no longer valid.
Definitely, the new chair is a good reason to challenge those restriction orders. Of course, that will inevitably make the process longer and further
Yeah.
delay hearings.
The thing is, though, so Missing's off writing this interim report after Tranche 3 hearings finally
Mm.
conclude in summer next year, June, July, isn't it? So Mitting is
30th of
off.
July, it's meant to finish.
So Mitting's off writing his report. So I hear what you're saying about them not wanting to bring a new chair in while Mitting's still doing his
Mm.
homework. But there's no reason not to, though. It's the new chair and the team that should be carrying on, speeding things up. Currently, the way it looks is that there's going to be no hearings for 18 months. No evidence hearings, that is, which
Crazy.
seems to me absolutely ridiculous.
Though not
Still,
unprecedented.
it's just insane. I know that for good reason. People, unlike me, took the further delay a bit more calmly, mainly because
Mm.
they took it as at least the tranche for evidence is going to be looked at properly rather than rushed through, which I get. But obviously, if we hadn't waited 5 years looking at all the anonymity orders and the absurd and overlong way that each document was security checked a million times, then obviously we wouldn't be talking now. Well, we might be
Mm.
talking now, but we'd be talking about an inquiry which
Mm.
concluded some time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. As well as this, there's been a couple of other tidbits of information that have come out of the inquiry since we last chatted. The anonymity on EN31, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, so EN31, he was, amongst other things, Mark Kennedy's cover officer, his handler. Basically, if you want to know about EN31, I highly recommend you read Kate Wilson's book Disclosure, because EN31 features heavily in that.
Like we mentioned earlier, she'll be doing a tour around the book when the inquiry's on. So yeah, look out for that. But yeah, maybe we should do another
Yeah, yeah.
episode with her. Yeah, and if you're able to make those, really highly recommended. I don't think I need to tell the listeners this podcast, but she's a fantastic speaker and got a ridiculous mind for detail. I'm often blown away by the way that she manages to put things together. Other than that, just looking through the other news that we've missed, the inquiry released their vulnerable witness policy, which is absolute farce. The trauma-reformed approach they're meant to be taking has been shockingly bad. I don't think I need to go over again. It's something we've raised again and again, maybe not on this podcast particularly, but certainly on the day-to-day coverage, the videos and reports that we do during the hearings. The disrespect and the lack of understanding for people's trauma that the inquiry has shown. They've put together a policy which supposedly brings together existing practices. If that's all it does, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. We will see. We will wait and see. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully the next set of hearings that the non-state, non-police co-participants are treated with a greater degree of respect than they have been in the past. But I remain to be convinced on that front, to be perfectly honest. So we start on the 13th of October. It'll be virtual, as they always have been, the opening statements. Hopefully, Chris will join me and we'll do our usual video reactions to those first 3 days. And then things start in earnest on Thursday, the 16th of October. And we start off with a management officer, HN 587, Peter Phelan, who technically should have been part of Tranche 2. As is often the case with these management, it's very difficult to know very much about them at all. Obviously, they weren't in the field. Most of our research around these officers before we come to the inquiry is based on what they did when they were in the field, how they affected the lives of those that we're able to talk to, looking at the events that they were around, reading the activist publications, news reports around those events.
He was commander of Special Branch in 1984. I just looked up what documents that are available, so if we could find anything out about him. Off the top of my head, not a lot.
It is a name that we heard during some of the hearings occasionally, though not in any great detail. But yeah, like I say, one of the bigger fish. Wouldn't surprise me if his memory isn't that great.
For the other management witness, Dennis Gunn, HM 143.
That'll be on Monday, the 20th of October. That's the third day of hearings.
Yeah, so he's referred to in correspondence as Ben Gunn, the character from Treasure Island. He was another Special Branch commander following on from Phelan's, basically, Phelan's successor. The one thing I can find out about him is he knew about Stephen Scutt.
Yeah, the Scutt affair. A previous episode covers in detail, worth going back through and hearing. The strange story of Stephen Scutt. In between hearing from Phelan and Gunn, we'll be hearing from Sarah on Friday the 17th of October. Sarah's not her real name.
So there's 3 civilian witnesses, all women, and all related to James Straven, real name James Thomson deployment. So there is an old power base profile of James Straven, which we transferred to our new websites as well. You can have a look at. HN16 James Straven, if you want to find out more.
We'll be hearing from 3 women who were affected by James Thomson, HN16's deployment. Sarah on Friday the 17th of October and Ellie on Thursday the 23rd of October, both of whom were deceived into sexual relationships by him. And then from Wendy, another woman who initially wasn't going to be called to give evidence because, as far as the inquiry was concerned, because she didn't have a sexual relationship, it wasn't deemed important. Thankfully, she has been called to give evidence. That'll also be on Thursday the 23rd of October. We'll then be having a break following week for half term.
Could I just interrupt you briefly, Tom, because the schedule we're reading from, which is on the inquiry website, isn't complete. So for those of you who actually go and look at that schedule, you'll see there's a whole bunch of days missing. So the inquiry is only sitting Monday to Thursday, but even given that, there's still some days not filled in, but most probably they will be sitting days as far as we know. So it will be Monday to Thursday, excepting the break, which Tom was just about to talk about.
So Tuesday the 21st and Wednesday the 22nd of October, currently there is nothing listed. It may be that those are closed hearings, which we won't be able to get entry to. It may be that there's other things to add. The inquiry, as usual, doesn't communicate particularly well with co-participants around exactly what's going to be happening. But I would envisage that whatever happens, the inquiry will be sitting. Whether we're able to report on that or not is another matter. There'll be a week off from the 27th of October, and then we'll return back with Ellie returning to give evidence. This is something we've seen from the inquiry before now, where they often split the the questioning of a civilian witness either side of a week off. Very frustrating. It certainly runs roughshod over their whole idea of having some sort of vulnerable witness policy. That as a woman who was deceived into a sexual relationship by an undercover officer is being expected to go through the traumatic experience of reliving those moments in two parts, either side of half term. Totally unnecessary, I would argue. Yeah, then Tuesday, the 4th of November, we've got Lisa Crossland.
She is the relative of Kevin Crossland, who James Thompson, sorry, he adopted two cover names. I'm not quite sure why he used Crossland, but he, as well as having one cover name, which wasn't taken from a deceased child's identity, he also, for reasons best known to him, and I guess we'll find out about that in the hearings, in his witness evidence, he also decided to also adopt a second cover name. So
yeah. So we'll hear from the family member. Though those are always very traumatic pieces of evidence. I mean, to be honest, everybody who's not a cop who gives evidence is pretty traumatic. Thinking back to previous witnesses of family members whose relative has died as a child and then their identity resurrected by an undercover officer. Then we finally get to James Thompson himself. HN16 will be giving evidence for 4 days, starting on Wednesday, the 5th of November. So the Wednesday, the Thursday, then the following week on Monday, the 10th and Tuesday, the 11th. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up giving more evidence than that. We have seen a number of former undercover officers who've been called to give multiple days of evidence, particularly those who've engaged in deceiving women into sexual relationships, have ended up giving much longer, been questioned for much longer than they were initially down for. And that might explain some of the gaps that we get in the hearing schedule.
He mainly infiltrated animal rights related and hunt saps. At least he claimed he infiltrated the Animal Liberation Front. I think that's up for argument. He certainly infiltrated Brixton and Croydon hunt saps. Yeah, as we mentioned, it saved two women into an intimate relationship while being deployed and continued contact with them way after his deployment finished. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. I mean, there's quite a detailed profile, and I don't really want to go into every single detail, not least because there'll be fresh evidence given from the people most deeply affected. One of the unusual things is that his cover job was in the film industry.
Yes.
And I think he's actually credited on IMDb or
IMDb, yeah.
whatever. We assume or we think that perhaps he had some contacts there. One of the things about him was known as James Blonde and was very posh.
He came up a bit when we were hearing from one Matt Rayner, the undercover officer used the cover name Matt Rayner, who was his mentor in this mentoring sort of scheme that they had. And again, another incredibly posh undercover officer. Yeah, the thing with the film industry is quite interesting. I think it really reminds me of like those officers who did DJing or like started bands. This thing of their deployment gave them this opportunity to like kind of live out their sort of teenage dreams of what they would like to have been if they didn't become a cop. And like maybe he always wanted to work in the film industry. He seemed to spend a lot of his time whilst being paid to be an undercover officer working on film.
He got beaten up at a Countryside Alliance demonstration and apparently was often, at least according to some people, at the forefront of any aggro as well. Much like Matt Rayner, though he denied that, of course.
Yeah, very unconvincingly. Rayner's whole approach was, just unbelievable, really, in the face of overwhelming evidence, including photographs of him being very aggressive, very clearly. Supposedly, him claiming I sort of stayed at the back, and then the photos there of him at the front with his arms raised. Just not really credible. Yeah, then after James Thompson's finished giving his evidence, we'll be hearing from Lewis, who's not their real name.
So Lewis, there's basically a whole load of civilian witnesses, all related to Peter Francis' deployment, Pete Black as he was, his cover name, into various anti-fascist groups. Which will, I think, be quite interesting. Obviously, I've seen a lot of evidence. I have to be careful what I say, but I'd just like to mention that all the civilian witness evidence I've read via disclosure have been excellent and, make their points very forcefully. I can't say any more than that, I don't think, at this stage. But some of those civilians are quite well known, not least Doreen Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence's mum, of course. There's a whole bunch of people who me and you know quite well from the inquiry, including Lois Austin. Who else that we got there? Unfortunately, it looks like Dave Smith isn't listed as a witness, which find very surprising indeed and a bit upsetting, to be honest. And we've also got Suresh Grover from the monitoring group as well, Ricky Reel's mum as well.
It's interesting to see the way in which the inquiry will approach the former undercover officer HN43, Peter Francis, who used the cover name Peter Johnson or Peter Black when he was deployed. Obviously, he is the only undercover officer who has gone whistleblower. In many ways, he's part of the reason why a lot of us begin to take our suspicions further and contact the Guardian journalists back in 2010. His presence at the inquiry casts a long shadow. He's often there in the public gallery whilst evidence is being presented and his former colleagues are being questioned. It's very telling that whilst previous undercover officers have maybe had one or two civilian witnesses speaking out about them, for Peter Francis, we've got 12 civilian witnesses.
I was going to say that's the only ones that have been called. There's way more actual written statements have been submitted than that. So
yeah, so there's Lewis Austin, Dan Gilman, Hannah Sell, Frank Smith, Alex Owende, Suresh Grover, Baroness Doreen Lawrence, Karen Boyle, Sugef Reel, Bernick Redwick, and MSS, not their real name. That'll be running from Wednesday the 12th of November right through to Thursday the 27th of November. So, we're going to have a lot. We're going to be hearing a great deal about his deployment from a lot of different angles. This is the kind of complete picture that you would kind of hope for all the deployments. Peter Francis is a controversial officer as far as the police are concerned. I wonder if there will be an attempt to do much more of a hatchet job on his character than we have seen of any of the previous officers. And so the lack of inclusion of Dave Smith is a huge oversight. I know he's not happy about it. He's attempting to get himself called. There's a complaint going in from his lawyer about that. I think it's okay to mention that. Hopefully he will be able to give evidence. So then we will get to Peter Francis himself giving evidence. Starts on Monday the 1st of December through to Thursday the 4th. It may be that he ends up giving more evidence than that. In the past, it has sat on Fridays. As I've said, he will be attacked quite significantly by the police about some of the things he said in the public. I mean, he also is very much open to criticism by those activists who he infiltrated, and those criticisms of him are incredibly valid, and I am very much here for them. I think it will be a unique undercover officer to be giving evidence because of his personal history. I think it'll be worth following it with some detail, which I fully intend to do. I think we all intend to do. But yeah, I certainly have plenty of criticisms myself, and when he does give evidence, I'm sure you'll hear them all.
I would say that I don't think Peter Francis minds upsetting anybody. I think that'd be fair to say. He's not trying to be anybody's friend when he's giving it. If you look what he said in the media, he's been a great whistleblower, but he's not. On the other hand, he's not like, if you like, empathise with us as activists in any way. So I think we should, we should take what's useful from his evidence and ignore the rest.
100%, 100%. Okay, so once Peter Francis has completed his evidence, we'll be going on to hear from Alison, who is the woman who was deceived into a long-term intimate relationship by Mark Jenner, who she knew as Mark Cassidy, HN15. You might be familiar with her story. She was one of the women's voices that was included in the Undercover, Love and Lies Exposed ITV documentary series earlier this year. Quite uniquely, Alison had quite a lot of home video footage whilst he was deployed into her life. I think this really brought alive that documentary series. If you haven't seen it yet, I really recommend going to see it. I think it really brings home, particularly her case, because of the footage, because of the large amount of footage that she had of him. It really brings home what it was like to be infiltrated in such an intimate way and for such a long period of time.
The other thing it features is a very young-looking Rob Evans from The Guardian, which came as quite a shock to us. So we never thought he was young. Ever. But the other thing, just touching on that, that video evidence, I think I actually find the same thing when we read the letters, the love letters. Even when you're hearing the evidence and these relationships were duplicitous and faked, there's part of you actually wants to believe what they're saying in those letters are true. I don't know if you ever get that feeling.
100%. It's something, I mean, it's something we've spoken about before. I don't know if we've done it on camera or on a podcast, but it's something that I know you and me have talked about, is that sometimes when the evidence is happening, it's so awful. And what they're saying is so awful, is your brain wants them to go down a different road. Like, it's like, your brain wants them to explain it away and make it like less awful in some way, because you want it to, although there was some truth there or something. I mean, there isn't. And it's almost like your brain protecting itself from like the horrible, traumatic vileness of these men and what they did. The love letters very similarly, yeah, I have the same reaction. Really, really disturbing. Really, goes to the heart of, yeah, what is so, oh, just indescribably awful about the whole thing. As well as Alison giving evidence, she'll be giving us for a full day from Monday, the 8th of December. And then for the rest of that week, we'll be hearing from other civilians, not their real name, Steve Headley, Mark Metcalf, and Dr. Graham Smith.
Steve Headley, he was the ex-head of the RMT. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, senior RMT officer. I don't think he was ever head, but my left-wing train spotting's like a lot better now because of the inquiry, but my trade union official train spotting is not up to scratch.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Some of the other people are known, the activists who've been active on this topic elsewhere on Twitter and so forth. You may have come across their names. Anyway, then on in the lead up to Christmas, from Monday the 15th of December through till the 18th, we'll be hearing from Mark Jenner, who used the cover name Mark Cassidy, HN15. There's a lot that can be said about him. I think I'll try and get Alison to do a podcast episode maybe in the lead up to that, or possibly in the immediate aftermath of that. Yeah. Alison has appeared on a lot of in audio only, on a lot of the Twitter spaces that I do after the hearings and the videos off camera. Though now, after she did that documentary series, she does have like this outfit, this makeup and wigs and everything. They put all the women in so that you wouldn't recognize them. And I have to say, it looks nothing like her. It's very, very weird. So yeah, if you saw her on TV and she walked past you in the street as she normally looks, you would not recognize her for a second.
Yeah, I asked about those wigs. I wouldn't mind one. They said they were way out of my price league. So
yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah. Just keep with the hats, mate. Keep with the hats. But yeah, Mark Cassidy, someone who infiltrated the Colin Roach Centre, anti-fascist groups, socialist groups, someone we've heard reference to repeatedly throughout because he was mentored by officers who've given evidence before. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Alison sits next to me at a lot of the hearings, and she's always got her ears tuned for anything about him. So, I mean, that'll be very interesting. Theoretically, it'll finish on Thursday, the 18th, giving us a chance to go on for a Christmas break. And that will be all of Tranche 3, Phase 1 completed. We'll be back then for Phase 2, February.
Yeah, February.
Yeah, giving us January off.
And then that's about another month, isn't it, of hearings? And then there's a break until, is it June? Where then we'll hear the Tranche 3 managers. Yeah. So it's quite spread out. Well, can we do some breaking news?
Yeah, breaking news, certainly.
Breaking news. Actually, it's not really news to us. So the inquiry are going to announce the Tranche 4 group spied on list, but only the one we know absolutely everything about already. Well, not absolutely everything. I'm sure there'll be some stuff we don't know, but Mark Kennedy, Rod Richardson cover name, Marco Jacobs cover name, and Lynn Watson cover name. Their deployments are pretty well documented and had been for almost 15 years. So I'll be very surprised if there's one group name on there that we didn't already know about.
And probably didn't already publish in 2010 or 11, I would argue.
Exactly. Yeah. So
I mean that breaking news. I mean, I think I could criticize you for calling it breaking news, but as far as the inquiry is concerned, I mean that is breaking news. Then only 15 years after it's been published by activists, we're giving you a list. I mean, ridiculous.
I mean, there is an element of Tranche 4 looking forward that because of the massive restrictions on all the other officers we don't know about, the undercover officers we don't know about, or ones we only suspected, I should put it that way, perhaps, we are going to hear a lot of stuff we already know about for Tranche 4. As it stands at the moment, if they keep all these anonymity orders in place for the other officers, we're going to be told what we already know a lot of the time. It's
frustrating that we just get told, we just get confirmed what we already knew. But I always think back of those early days when we first found out about the deployment of undercover officers, and having confirmation of what we had revealed would have meant a great deal. It's testament to how far we've come and how much of the narrative has been wrested control away from the police of their false narrative into the actual truth. The simple confirmation of things that we knew is we're now like, oh, what's the point? But there wasn't long ago, or it doesn't feel long ago now. I mean, it's over 10 years ago. God, a lot more than 10 years ago. I would have been very pleased to have confirmation about stuff that we uncovered. So that's what we'll be doing between now and Christmas. As usual, I'll be tweeting the hearings as they happen. I'll be making videos in the breaks at lunchtime at the end of the day, then doing a Twitter space in the evening. Please follow all of that. It'll be on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. We'll be trying to maximise the visibility of those revelations as they come out. If you're able to help in any way with doing that, if you'd like to come along to any of the hearings, there's always plenty of space. Please come down. Hopefully we've given you an idea of which days will be well worth visiting. Often, though, I would say sometimes you think it's going to be a bit of a non-event of a day, and actually it turns out there's a lot of information that gets released then. It's amazing how much you miss if you weren't there, I would argue. As someone who's been to every hearing, maybe I would say that. But come down, keep an eye on the social media. Please share it. Please tell your friends about all this stuff. Please share this podcast episode and the others. Check out the others if you haven't heard them. I always mean to do podcasts during the hearings, but it's just so much work doing the coverage that I do. I don't never really have the time.
Rare occasion where I'm being nice to Tom in public, but Tom tweets all day and then does the Twitter Spaces for another 2 hours in the evening, which is, actually suggested several times he doesn't do that to himself. So he feels an obligation to do that. So I do urge you to support his Buy Me a Coffee self-funding website thingy-majiggy.
Oh, yeah. If you do want to do that, the website is ko-fi.com/Tom B. Fowler. You can find that I do occasional write-ups, blog posts, but you're able to donate if you want to cover my costs of doing the coverage. That would be great. No big backers behind any of this stuff. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. Check out previous episodes at spycops.info. Please give us a 5-star rating if you're able to, and a review on whatever podcast platform you like to listen to things on.
Could I mention just one thing completely off topic?
Sure. Go for it.
I'm running the Cardiff Half Marathon for Oasis, not for Liam and Noel, I hasten to add. But
they're desperate for the cash.
Yeah, they are. They're really hard up, those guys. But a very small Cardiff-based refugee charity called Oasis. So you can look my sponsorship page up at justgiving.com, Chris Bryan, if you want to chip in for that.
And if anybody who knew Chris back in the day is currently on the floor hearing that he's running marathons, this is the new improved Chris Bryan 2.0, who has been being healthy now for quite a few years, and for whom running a marathon's no big deal.
Half marathon, I think a marathon would be a big deal. Yeah.
Also, just quickly before we go, the Demand the Impossible theatre production about the infiltration of undercover officers in the protest groups is starting fairly soon, 6th of October. Check that out if you're able to. It's in Newport, so it's a great opportunity to visit Newport, or if you already live in Newport, to go to the theatre.
Yeah, please come. Any listeners, you can message me and Tom to get more details about that via social media or email.
All right, thanks for joining us. See you all soon.
Are you ready to demand the impossible? What if we told you there are people who dare to imagine something different, who push against the system, stand up for what is right, who demand the impossible, dedicate their lives to their cause, campaign for justice, to stop a bomb, change a law, save a life? What if we told you their friends and lovers were spying on them, eating at their tables, sleeping in their beds and dancing with them at raves? What if we told you about construction workers who were refused work, illegally blacklisted after cops grassed them up to their bosses as troublemakers? What if we told you police spied on racial justice campaigns, surveilling families grieving the loss of their murdered children? All of this happened, orchestrated, sanctioned, and paid for by the state.
Demand the Impossible, Commonwealth's new production, will premiere at the Corn Exchange in Newport, South Wales in October 2025. Part performance, part punk gig, part sensory experience, Demand the Impossible is an immersive 90-minute performance exploring police injustice and the undercover infiltration of activist networks. It challenges us to question truth, trust and power as uncomfortable relationships between the state, police and citizens are exposed.